Hello and welcome to the 2020-21 PA UCC Residential Code Update Part 2. My name is Darren Wright and I am the High Performance Housing Specialist here at the Pennsylvania Housing Research Center. The Pennsylvania Housing Research Center facilitates education, training, innovation, research, and dissemination of the residential construction industry for the purpose of improving the quality and affordability of housing. Educational programs and publications by the PHRC address a wide range of topics relevant to the home building industry and are designed to reach a diverse audience of builders, code officials, remodelers, architects, developers, engineers, planners, landscape architects, local government officials, educators, etc., to provide professional development and continuing education. The description of today's webinar is building upon the previous webinar of the 2021 PA UCC Residential Code Update Part 1, which was given in November. This session will dive deeper into the implication of the transition to the portions of the 2021 ICC-based codes that were approved for adoption. It will dive into some highlights of the new code provisions affecting residential construction. These are the basics of the learning objectives, review the most efficient ways to find out which code provisions have changed between 2018 and 2021, discuss noteworthy and substantial code provision changes that will impact design costs and occupant safety, dive deeper into various code changes that will affect residential construction, and understand available resources on best practices that may be impacted by code changes, specifically focusing on building enclosure. And how will these changes be presented? Section of change, there's provisions modified or not adopted. We'll talk about that as we go through the slides. There's three basic change types. There's the addition, modification, or clarification. And within the slides, you'll see a change summary, the summary of the significant change. And there's code language with changes are in red. And you're also going to see PA UCC RAC amendments, which we also included when they're applicable to what we're talking about in orange. Again, today's information is coming directly out of the significant changes to the IRC, the 2021 edition. And additional information is also taken out of the PA UCC 2021 International Code adoption. Sections are broken down into about 8 parts: administration, building planning, building construction, energy conservation, mechanical, fuel, gas, plumbing, and electrical. We're going to start with administration. The first thing in administration we'll talk about is R202, the definition of emergency and escape rescue openings. This change type is a clarification. As you can see, the change summary states definitions for emergency escape and rescue openings and grade floor openings have been updated for clarification and to be consistent with the IBC. What it's saying is the 2021 IRC includes provisions for emergency escape rescue provisions, which have been updated for consistency with the IBC. Key changes involve clarifying the definition of measurements for the maximum height of emergency escape openings and grade floor openings. Previously, the measurements for sill height was ambiguous, but the 2021 code clearly specifies that it should be taken to the lowest point of the opening, not necessarily a windowsill. Additionally, the definition of grade floor opening has been revised to better explain the connection to emergency escape and rescue openings. This provision addresses confusion around the reduced opening area for emergency escape grade and clarifies that the exception applies only to openings close to grade, not those deeper than 44 inches below grade. These updates aim to make the provision more understandable and applicable. And the second slide in administration is R202, the definition of a townhouse. Again, this is a clarification, including all units. The new definition clarifies that a townhouse unit is an individual single-family dwelling within a townhouse building. And a townhouse building consists of 3 or more units. This change ensures consistency across the code, including the townhouse provisions of section R302.2. Additionally, the definition of building has been updated to specify including townhouses along with 1- and 2-family dwellings and accessory structures. Going into building planning, R301.3 is story heights. And this change type is a clarification. And the change summary states maximum story height for wood wall framing is 13 feet 7 inches when the exception requirements are met. The 2020, okay, what they're saying is the 2021 IRC revision section R301.3 to address previous confusion surrounding story height provisions. Historically, the code allowed wood frame buildings to have bearing wall stud heights of up to 10 feet, with exceptions permitting up to 12 feet if an engineer design was provided for wall bracing, except for wind and seismic loads. The 2009 and 15 provisions attempted to address issues with the 16-inch maximum floor framing depth and story height limits, but led to conflicting provisions with wall bracing and masonry walls. The 2021 update restores the 12-foot bearing wall stud height exception without requiring engineering, as long as compliance with wall bracing requirements in section R602.10 is met. This clarification resolves conflicts with previous story height limits and wall bracing provisions while maintaining engineering requirements for taller walls, not complying with certain exceptions in section R602.3.1. The revised code also provides specific snow load limits for taller studs in certain regions, ensuring bearing balance between structural integrity and safety. So this is a 2-slide part. And I'm just going to keep going on from here. R302.2, this addresses townhouses. This is a modification. The change summary: common walls separating townhouses are permitted to terminate at the sides of the exterior walls where the prescribed fire blocking is provided. Okay, R302.2 has been updated to clarify fire resistance separation requirements for townhouse units. A townhouse unit is defined as a building with 3 or more dwelling units, each called a townhouse unit. As we talked about earlier, fire separation can use either 2 1-hour rated walls or a common wall with a 1-hour rating and sprinklers, or 2-hour rating without sprinklers. The common wall must extend to the exterior wall sheathing unless an exception applies requiring specific fire blocking materials. The structural independence for separation walls is generally required, but sprinklers can be provide an exception. Additionally, water-filled sprinkler piping is now allowed in common walls to reduce installation costs, aligning with IBC standards. And here's 2 diagrams that show the prohibited installation and the new permitted installation. Okay, R302.3, 2-family dwelling separations is a modification. The prescribed fire resistance rating separation between 2 dwelling units in a single building is not affected by the presence of a lot line between the units. That's what summary states. The updated code clarifies fire separation requirements for 2-family dwellings, duplexes, regardless of whether a lot line exists between the units. Only a 1-hour fire-resistant rated wall is required. This resolves previous debates where some jurisdictions treated the lot line as a required 2-hour walls or considered the units as separate single-family dwellings. The change aligns duplex provisions with townhouse rules, ensuring consistency and eliminating confusion. Okay, R302.5, dwelling garage opening protection. This is a clarification, and there is an addition to the PA UCC rack change. This change summary: doors between the garage and residence must be self-latching. The IRC requires basic fire protection between an attached garage and the dwelling, typically achieved with 1/2-inch gypsum board on the garage side. While not fire resistant rated, this barrier slows fire spread. Garage to house doors must meet specific thicknesses or a 20-minute rating, and introduced in 2012 to prevent fire, toxic fumes, and carbon monoxide from entering the home. Doors between the garage and home must now include self-closing devices. These devices, like spring-loaded hinges, enhance safety alongside smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. R303.1 mechanical ventilation. This change type is a clarification. In the summary states, a local exhaust system is an applicable substitute for natural ventilation in kitchens. And again, prior to 2012, the IRC provided an option for 0.35 ACH or whole house mechanical ventilation where prescribed natural ventilation wasn't provided, or whole house mechanical ventilation systems where the prescribed natural ventilation was not provided. The 2012 change eliminated the first option. The 2021 IRC reintroduces the option for room-based mechanical ventilation systems providing 0.35 air changes per hour, offering flexibility for additions or remodels. It also clarifies that local exhaust systems such as kitchen range hoods can replace natural ventilation in kitchens to effectively remove cooking of pollutants. This change emphasizes the need for ventilation directly at the source in kitchens, aligning with Chapter 15 provisions. R305.1, ceiling height rack modification. This is a modification. Change summary. The minimum ceiling height is reduced to 6 feet 6 inches under beams spaced at least 36 inches apart. And again, ceiling heights, the intent of the language in the code is to allow beams to project from the ceiling, such as the base of the beam is at least 6 feet 6 inches above the floor. The minimum finish to finish horizontal dimension between the beams is 36 inches. The exception would not be applicable to basements, as the code already permits a ceiling height reduced to 6 feet 4 inches for beams, girders, ductwork, and basements. The new exception is a result of concern expressed that the size of the beams and girders has increased in recent years with the advent of engineered lumber, open floor plans, and that a ceiling height of 7 feet was not always achievable. The height of 6 feet 6 inches was chosen based on the clear height dimensions of the one required egress door measured from the threshold to the underside of the headstop. The code does not regulate the dimensions of the other doors in the house, but typically they maintain a clear height exceeding 6 feet 6 inches. And we've included a diagram within your slides, your handouts. R308.4.5, glazing and wet surfaces. This is just a clarification. The language addresses glazing in walls, enclosures, or fences near tubs, showers, and swimming pools has replaced the word facing with the words adjacent to for those elements related to wet surfaces. Basically, the IRC requires safety glazing near tubs, showers, and swimming pools to reduce the risk of injury from slips and falls on wet surfaces. Historically, there has been confusion around how to apply the 60-inch horizontal safety zone around these fixtures. Some interpreted the rule to apply only to glazing directly facing the fixture, while others included all glazing within the 60-inch zone, regardless of orientation. To clarify, the update code now uses the term adjacent to describe glazing near these fixtures, aligning with the language used for glazing near stair landings. This change ensures that safety glazing protects against falls in any direction within the slippery 60-inch zone, providing clear and more consistent guidance. Moving on to R310.1, emergency escape and rescue opening requirement. This also includes a rack modification in orange. Again, this change type is a clarification in the code book. The change summary states emergency escape and rescue openings require a clear 36-inch path to a public way. Operation requirements have been clarified. Emergency escape and rescue openings are critical safety features in the IRC, providing secondary exits in emergencies. These openings have been required in sleeping rooms and since the 2006 code in all basements and habitable spaces. The 2021 code introduces a new requirement for a 36-inch wide path from the opening to the public way, ensuring safe travel during an emergency. Additionally, it clarifies that emergency escape windows can use fall prevention devices that meet ASTM F2090 standards, with the release mechanism not exceeding 70 inches above the floor. These changes ensure safe and effective means of escape, particularly for children near high windows. And exception 4 was added through a rack modification. R310.2 emergency escape and rescue openings. It's a modification. And the change summary states emergency escape openings under deck, porches, and cantilevers require a path not less than 36 inches wide. Opening dimensions have also been clarified. 2021 IRC update to section R310.2 mainly involves editorial and organizational changes. The minimum clear opening area of 5.7 square feet and dimensions for emergency escape windows are now clearly separated. The exception for grade floor openings has been clarified to apply only to openings meeting the new definition of grade floor emergency escape and rescue opening. Additionally, the code now measures window openings height from the floor to the clear opening, eliminating references to sills. Another change allows emergency escape openings under floor cantilevers, requiring a 36-inch minimum path width to the yard, along with the existing 36-inch height requirements for paths under decks and porches. R310.5, replacement windows for emergency escape and rescue openings. This is a modification. The change summary states opening dimensions have been reduced for emergency escape and rescue openings for a basement remodel, basement addition, and for a change of occupancy. Again, the 2021 RC has reorganized and clarified provisions for emergency and escape rescue openings. Section R310.5 now focuses on replacement windows in existing dwellings, requiring that replacement windows be no less safe than the existing ones, and that the largest standard size window that fits within the opening, and to be the largest standard size window that fits within the existing opening. R310.6, this is dwelling additions, and this change type is a modification, and the change summary states opening dimensions have been reduced for emergency escape and rescue openings for a basement remodel, basement addition, and for a change of occupancy. R310.6 retains requirements for emergency escape openings in new bedrooms and basements and dwellings and additions, with a new exception allowing a reduced window size in certain cases, for certain cases, and really it just adds the exception of an operable window complying with section 310.7.1 shall be acceptable as an emergency escape and rescue opening. R310.7, alterations or repairs of existing basements. This is a modification. The change summary states opening dimensions have been reduced for emergency escape and rescue openings for a basement remodel, basement addition, and for a change of occupancy. R310.7 clarifies that only new sleeping rooms and existing basements require an emergency escape opening, and a new exception permits smaller window openings for existing windows in these rooms. R310.7.1, existing emergency and escape rescue openings. This is a modification. And again, the change summary states opening dimensions have been reduced for emergency escape and rescue openings for a basement remodel, basement addition, and for a change of occupancy. And R310.7.1 further addresses reduced window sizes for changes in occupancy, providing flexibility and emergency and escape opening requirements in specific scenarios, aligning with provisions from the IEBC. R312.2.1, window opening heights. This is just a clarification. The revised language clarifies that measurements for determining the need for fall protection are taken to the bottom of the clear opening of the window. Again, these provisions will apply to windows with openings above 72 inches in height, where the minimum opening height above the finished floor is set at 24 inches unless other protection like an opening control device is provided. The measurement method for this requirement has changed over time. Initially, the measurements were taken to the window opening, and in the 2015 edition, they were taken to the windowsill. And in the 221 edition, the reference to the windowsill has been removed, and the measurements are now taken to the bottom of the clear window opening. R314.3 smoke alarm locations. This is a modification. A new location requirement for smoke alarms addresses ceiling height adjacent to hallways serving the bedrooms. And the 2021 IRC introduces updates to smoke alarm placement requirements to improve the safety and reduce nuisance alarms. Smoke alarms are still required in each bedroom, adjacent areas, and on each level, with the exception for open split level designs where a smoke alarm on the upper level services both levels. However, in homes with a hallway leading to bedrooms that open into a great room with a ceiling height, a new requirement mandates that an additional smoke alarm on the upper ceiling if it is more than 24 inches above the hall ceiling, ensuring faster detection of the smoke. The 2015 IRC already addressed nuisance alarms by requiring smoke alarms to be placed a certain distance from cooking appliances and bathrooms. The new code also allows photoelectric smoke alarms to be installed as close as 6 feet from cooking appliances, reducing the risk of false alarms, while smoke alarms listed under the new UL 217 standards are specifically designed to resist nuisance alarms from cooking. And this is just a diagram section drawing of the placement of the new alarm. R315.2.2 carbon monoxide alarms. This is a modification. Repairs to an existing fuel-fired mechanical system now triggers the retroactive requirements for carbon monoxide alarms. And the 2021 RC updates specifies that alterations or repairs to mechanical systems are exempt from these requirements only if they do not involve fuel-fired equipment. This change ensures all that fuel burning systems such as forced air units or water heaters are subject to the carbon monoxide alarm provisions when altered or repaired. R320 accessibility. This change type is a modification, and the change summary states the accessibility provisions for live-work units and the owner-occupied lodging houses constructed under the IRC are now clarified. In the 2021 IRC update clarifies the definition of live-work units in townhouses and owner-occupied lodging houses with no more than 5 sleeping units, like a bed and breakfast, removing confusing language. Additionally, the code strengthens the link to the IBC by specifying that the non-residential part of live-work units must be accessible, and where there are 4 or more such units, the dwelling portions must comply with IBC accessibility provisions, though multi-level units without elevators are still exempt, meaning that in most cases, townhouses are exempt from the accessibility requirements. R323 storm shelters, change type, this is an addition. Added guidance on the design of storm shelters is placed in section R323. The 2021 IRC introduces provisions aimed at ensuring the safety and effectiveness of residential storm shelters. Failures in shelters that did not meet the ICC 500 standard for storm shelters highlighted the importance of proper design and construction. Shelters placed above ground without accounting for tornado or hurricane loads were particularly prone to failure. To address this, section R323.1 mandates that storm shelters comply with ICC 500, requiring shelters to be engineered and certified by a registered design professional. The code also adds a definition of storm shelters and requires sealed plans for structural and impact protection systems. An exception allows listed and labeled shelter designs which have undergone third-party review to be submitted without individual design. Footings below light frame construction. This is a modification. The change summary tables are 403.1 and 2 and 3 are revised to more accurately reflect the current practice. Again, the 2020 IRC revises the minimum width and thickness requirements for concrete footings outlined in tables R403.1, 2, and 3, introduced in the 2015 edition. These changes address discrepancies between the footing widths required by the tables and those suggested by engineering analysis, which found some widths are unnecessarily wide due to conservative assumptions. Key revisions include roof snow loads instead of ground snow load, adjusting the load for above grade concrete or masonry walls from 100 PSF to 55 PSF, and applying more accurate load combinations for roof, snow, and floor live loads. Additionally, the revised calculations clarify the use of tributary widths for footing design, eliminating the confusion caused by previous guidelines that stated footing widths for wider buildings. These updates generally align with historic practices while ensuring technical accuracy. A new structure for footnotes further clarifies to adjust footing widths and depths based on building width, especially for buildings wider than 32 feet. And if you go to the new code book, you will see there's a lot of strikeouts, and most of the footer widths are narrower. Not by a lot, by a few inches. R406.2, foundation waterproofing. This change type is actually a deletion. 6 mil polyvinyl chloride and polyvinyl fabrics are removed from the list of approved waterproofing materials. Basically stating you can no longer use 6 mil polyvinyl chloride or polyethylene for waterproofing your foundation walls. This is to address the fact that these materials tear rather easily, and they're not very durable and are very strong. The update code now requires the use of heavier, more resistant materials with a minimum thickness of an 1/8 of an inch or 40 millimeters, which are better suited to withstand damage during installation and provide long-lasting protection against water infiltration. R506.2.3, vapor retarders under concrete slabs. This actually is a rack modification I wanted to include. Thicker vapor retarders are now required below slabs. That's the change summary in the code book. And their code change was moving the minimum thickness to 10 mil, but the rack modification canceled that 10 mil modification and kept it at 6 mil polyethylene for approved vapor retarder. So you could still use 6 mil under slabs, even though in the IRC book it says 10 mil. R507 deck loads. This change type is a modification. The change summary, deck design is now based on live and snow loads. The 2021 IRC update deck design provision to account for areas with higher snow loads. The PHRC is going to be having a webinar in January. This webinar will be presented by Chris Hine, and he will be presenting a webinar on deck design and modification. So previously, all decks were designed with a uniform 40 PSF live and a 10 PSF dead load. However, the new code requires decks to be designed to either 40 PSFI live load or a ground snow load, whichever is higher based on your area or jurisdiction. This ensures that deck structures are adequately designed to handle local snow loads. And again, there are now 4 tables, the 40 PSFI tables, and then there's a 50, 60, and 70 table as well. The R507.3 deck footings, this is a modification. Again, clarifications are made for freestanding deck footings, exceptions in a tributary area of 5 PSF is added to the deck footing size table. the 2021 IRC clarifies foot exceptions for freestanding decks. Joists supported directly on grade no longer require footings, and small decks low to the ground can use concrete piers to support deck joists without the need for beams or posts. These decks are limited to 200 square feet and a height of 20 inches above grade. Table R507.3.1 now offers a smaller minimum footing size for decks. This change makes footing requirements more appropriate for smaller areas like stairs or landings and allows for precast concrete solutions. Updated footnotes clarify that footings must be large enough for full post bearing and specify that a minimum footing thickness applies to plain concrete, with reinforced footings potentially being allowed based on calculations. R507.4 deck posts. This is a modification. The change summary states the deck post height table is expanded by adding the tributary area supported by a post and the wood species for determination of a maximum post height. And again, R507.4 maximum deck post height has been significantly expanded in the 2021 IRC to accommodate a broader range of post heights by considering the tributary area supported by the post for smaller decks, porches, and landings. This expansion allows 4x4s and 4x6 posts to support greater heights, with a minimum post height of now reaching 14 feet for posts with an 8x8 minimum nominal dimension, or a maximum tributary area of 20 square feet. For decks with a PSF live load, the certain wood species such as southern pine, Douglas fir, hem fir, and spruce pine fir with 6x6 minimum dimensions can support the 14-foot height. The table accounts for 50, 60, and 7 PSF ground snow loads and standard wood assumptions. R507.5 deck beams. This is a modification. The change summary states the deck beam span table is split into multiple tables, providing spans for a given deck, live, or snow loads, single and multiply spans, as well as options for support of the cantilever decks. Cantilever deck joists are listed. Okay, moving on, 507.5 deck beams. Change type is a modification. The change summary states the deck beam span table is split into multiple tables, providing spans for a given deck, live, or snow loads, single and multiply spans, as well as options for support of the cantilever deck joists are listed. And again, to address the snow loads greater than 40 PSF, the 21 IRC update prescriptive deck provision with revised span tables. The table R507.5 deck beam span length is replaced by 4 new tables, R507.5 1 through 4, that account for 50, 60, and 7 PSF ground load conditions additionally to the traditional 40 PSF. These tables now list single ply spans for all wood species, with multiply span options still available for each species. Maximum beam spans are based on tributary areas influenced by joist spans, assuming all deck joist cantilever 1/4 of their back span past the supporting beam. For shorter joist cantilevers or no cantilevers, table R507.5 can be used to calculate the effective joist span, allowing the beam's maximum span to increase. The adjustment accounts for the reduced effective joist span and better accommodates varying snow load conditions. And several examples are provided to illustrate the effective joist spans in the 2021 IRC. And they are included in your handouts as well as here, but I'm not going to go over these. I'm going to move on to R507.6 deck joists. This change type is a modification. Change summary: deck joist options are added for decks with large ground snow loads. Cantilever spans are now specifically based on maximum joist span. And the 2021 IRC updates table 507.6, which previously caused confusion regarding cantilever lengths for deck joist. And the 2018 IRC cantilever limits were based on joist spacing and required designers to check both the maximum cantilever lengths and the limit of 1/4 of the joist span, which was often unclear. The new table uses backspan to define the actual joist span, making the maximum cantilever length more intuitive. Moving on to R507.7, the decking. This is a modification. The wood decking table is updated to show maximum on-center joist spacing for single and multi-span configurations. The 2021 IRC updates table 507.7, which addresses the maximum joist span for decking, particularly for 2-inch nominal wood decking material. The previous 2018 IRC table was conservative, recommending a maximum span of 16 inches, whereas the American Lumber Standard Committee decking policy allows for a span of up to 24 inches for certain 2-inch nominal materials. The updated table retains a conservative baseline but offers a greater flexibility for design and manufacturers by considering whether decking spans 2 or more joists. In a multi-span condition where decking spans across multiple joists, the allowable joist spacing may increase, especially for thin and flexible decking materials. Additionally, footnote B provides flexibility for 5/4 thick wood decking, allowing a lumber grading agency or a third-party inspector to determine the maximum joist span for specific decking materials. Again, moving on to R507.10, exterior guards. This is an addition. The change summary states specific requirements for deck guards are added. The 2020 IRC introduces new provisions for constructing exterior guards on deck, which were not required in the 2018 edition. The new rules emphasize that deck guards must meet the load requirements of Table R301.5, ensuring that they can withstand 200 pounds of force. Additionally, the guard system must be properly connected to the deck framing, including joists, beams, or blocking to ensure structural integrity. End grain connections are prohibited, meaning fasteners cannot be installed into the ends of joists or beams, as this could result in the fasteners pulling out under load. When guards are attached to the sides of beams or joists, additional reinforcements such as blocking or straps is required to prevent rotation and maintain stability. Moving out of decking into R609.4.1 into garage doors. This change type is an addition, and the change summary states all garage doors must have a permanent label identifying wind pressure ratings, among other information. The 2018 IRSA did not require garage doors to include a permanent label. The 21 IRC introduces section R609.4.1, which mandates that garage doors must have a permanent label displaying the manufacturer, model, series number, and the performance characteristics. Moving on to R702.7, we got vapor retarders. This change type is a modification. The change summary states the vapor retarder section is reorganized for clarity and ease of use. The 2021 IRC includes revised provisions for vapor retarders and wall assemblies to prevent water accumulation and moisture-related issues. Walls must have a water-based barrier behind the exterior cladding to drain any water that enters the vape in the vapor retarder on the interior side to resist condensation from the building interior. Historically, vapor retarders were required on the warm in winter side of exterior walls, but the research has shown that this is unnecessary in warmer climates. Therefore, the IRC now specifies that a vapor retarder be installed on the interior side of a building thermal envelope in specific climate zones. R703.2, water resistive barriers. Rack modification. Change type is a modification. Change summary, rack modification, language summary in the 2024 IRC. So basically, Pennsylvania is going more towards the 2024 IRC than the 2021. And the 2024 IRC emphasizes the importance of wall design in preventing water accumulation within assemblies by requiring a water-resistive barrier behind exterior cladding to facilitate drainage. The WRB must provide a continuous coverage from the building base to the wall top and ensure proper drainage, while additional number 15 asphalt felt remains an option. Modern WRB alternative meeting standards like ASTM cut R703.2 water resistive barriers. This is a rack modification. And again, this change type is a modification. The rack modification language is very similar to the 2024 IRC. And in the 2024 IRC, you can see here in orange where water resistive barrier also functions as a component of the continuous air barrier. The water resistive barrier shall be installed as an air barrier in accordance with section N1102.5.1.1. And again, there's the addition of number 3, which is not included in the 2021 code. Foam plastic insulated sheathing, water resistive barrier systems complying with section R703.1.1 and installed in accordance with the manufacturer's installation instructions. That is now allowed. Section 704 to clarify material installation requirements for soffits. Cut. R704 soffits, rack modification. This change type is an addition. Requirements for soffit material installation are expanded. And in the 2021 IRC introduces section 704 to clarify material installation requirements for soffits, addressing their wind performance and distinguishing them from exterior wall coverings provision in section 703. This update builds on provisions from the 2018 IRC and includes new prescriptive alternatives for wood structural panel soffits, ensuring compliance with wood pressure design criteria in the IRC and the ASC 7. To improve performance, section 704.2.1 mandates that vinyl soffit panels be fastened at both ends with unsupported spans limited to 16 inches, unless otherwise specified by the manufacturer. Enhanced construction is required in regions with design wind pressures exceeding 30 psf, while most areas will follow standard connection practices outlined in the 2018 IRC. And you can see the rack modification is just including the exterior when talking about soffits. And in R704.2.1, they also included aluminum exterior soffit panels as well. And here's just a diagram of the new installation requirements. R082 wood roof framing. This is also includes a rack modification. The change type in the IRC is a modification. The change summary states revised provisions clarify ridge beam and ceiling joist requirements. The 2021 IRC clarifies requirements for connecting rafters and ceiling joists to prevent rafter thrust, where roof loads push exterior bearing walls outward. Section R802.5 emphasizes the importance of continuous tie across the lower portion of rafters achieved using ceiling joists or rafter ties to maintain the structural stability of the roof triangle. When ceiling joists or rafter ties are absent, or if ceiling joists are positioned higher in the attic or perpendicular to the rafters, ties must comply with section R802.5.2 to resist thrust forces. For scenarios like cathedral ceilings where ceiling joists are missing, the code requires either a properly designed tie or the installation of a ridge beam engineered to support rafters at the peak. These provisions ensure structural integrity and prevent outward wall movement under roof loads. And you can see the rack modification is just at the addition of girders at the end of section R802.3. R802.6, rafter and ceiling joist bearing. This change type is a modification. Change summary text is added to clarify when a ridge board connection is sufficient for bearing. And the 2021 IRC clarifies that required bearing area for rafters at their top ends. The section R802.6 specifies that rafters and ceiling joists must have at least 1.5 inches of bearing on wood or metal. This ensures proper support where components meet horizontal surfaces like top plates or beams. In rafter systems with collar ties at the top and continuous ties at the bottom, gravity forces are transferred downward while horizontal bearing forces act at the rafter tops near the ridge board. These updates help ensure structural stability and load distribution. Moving on into energy, mechanical, and electrical plumbing significant changes. R1102.4.6, electrical and communication outlet boxes. This is an addition. The change summary states electrical and communication outlet boxes installed in the building thermal envelope must be sealed, tested, and marked for compliance with reference standards. And the new section R1102.4.6 introduces specific air leakage requirements for electrical and communication outlet boxes to enhance the efficiency of the building thermal envelope. Previous table R1102.4.1.1 allowed either an air barrier behind the boxes or on-site air sealing. The updated section mandates the use of air-sealed boxes that meet prescribed standards and test criteria, eliminating the reliance on field-applied sealing methods like insulation or caulk. These air-sealed boxes must be tested, marked for compliance, and installed per the manufacturer's instructions, ensuring effective air sealing. If your air barrier is on the exterior wall, if you're using the air sheathing, if you're using the sheathing method on the exterior of your building as your air barrier, you know, how this provision applies might be a question to move on to your local code official, whether you still need this interior box to be air sealed, especially if you can demonstrate that your air sealing barrier is on the exterior of your building if you're using a zip system as your air barrier. Moving on, N1104.1, lighting. This is not adopted per RAC report. N1106 and N1106.2, energy rating index. This is a modification. And the change summary states that the new table N1106.2 lists the requirements associated with the energy rating index compliance path. ERI values have been lowered to improve energy efficiency. And N1106 outlines the ERI compliance path included in the 2015 code as a method to demonstrate energy code compliance. The ERI is a scoring system benchmark at 100, representing the energy use of the 2006 IEC. Obviously, 100 is high and poor. Closer to 0 you want is the better representation. And 0 represents a net zero energy building, basically. The 2021 code restructures this section by clarifying requirements, eliminates the confusing mandatory and prescriptive labels, and consolidates all ERI related requirements into the section N1106. New tables provide detailed provisions and updated ERI target scores, restoring the more stringent benchmarks from the 2015 IECC. Additionally, new provisions in section N1101.13.5 require an ERI value of at least 5% lower than the 2021 targets, making the ERI path significantly more rigorous than other compliance methods. These changes aim to enhance clarity and drive improved energy efficiency in residential buildings. N1101.13.5, additional energy efficiencies. This was not adopted by the RAC report. N1108.1, scope. This is a RAC modification. Again, the RAC modification is you're striking out in accordance with section N1101.13.5 because the RAC is not adopting that modification. Again, 1108.2, an additional energy efficiency package options. This is a RAC modification again. And this is no longer, it says this modified language leaves the provision in the code, but are no longer mandatory. They can now be a guide for increased energy efficiencies. Moving on to mechanical, M1505, balanced ventilation system credit. This change type is a modification. The change summary, the code now allows a 30% reduction in the mechanical ventilation airflow rate for a balanced operated by the customer. And here's a basic diagram of the service meter assembly in the point of delivery. G2414.8.3, threaded joint sealant. This change type is a modification. Change summary states thread joint sealants are now required for assembling threaded joints in gas piping. And again, the code previously addressed threaded components, stating that when used, they would resist by chemical constituents of the gases. Until now, the code has not required the use of thread sealants on threaded joints. Sealing components must be of a material that does not harden over time so it remains effective, and so that pipe joints can be disassembled when necessary. The thread sealant must be compatible with the material used for the piping and resistant to the gases in the piping. G2439.5, makeup air for dryer installed in a closet. This change type is a clarification. The requirements for a transfer opening for supplying makeup air to a closet designed for a gas dryer has been moved into a separate section. And section G2439.5 has been revised to clarify the requirements for makeup air for dryers exhausting on over 200 CFM. Previously, the code combined the makeup air requirement with a need for an opening in the closet enclosures, which led to confusion. Now, section G2439.5 focuses solely on the requirements for makeup air supply for dryers exceeding 200 CFM threshold, while section G2439.5.1 addresses the need for an opening in the closet enclosure to allow makeup air into the space. This ensures that dryers are not starved for air and prevent negative pressure in the closet. The opening requirement in section G2439.5.1 now applies to all dryers, regardless of exhaust rate, ensuring ventilation. G2447.2, commercial and cooking appliances are now prohibited. Previously, you could use a commercial grade appliances if it was designed, as you can see here, where the installation is designed by a licensed professional engineer in a compliance with a manufacturer's instruction. That is completely now struck by the code. Only residential appliances are now approved. Plumbing, P2503.5.1, drain, waste, and vent systems testing. This is a modification. The head pressure for a water test of drain, waste, and vent systems has increased from 5 feet to 10 feet. Air vacuum testing is now permitted for plastic piping and DWV system, drain, waste, and vent systems. The 2021 IRC revisits the head pressure requirements for testing drain, waste, and vent systems with water. Previously reduced to 5 feet in the 2015 edition, the head pressure is now restored to 10 feet. The 2021 revision aligns with the International Plumbing Code, IPC, maintains consistency with the air pressure testing, which remained unchanged in the 2015 code. The test involves filling the DWV system with a water height of up to 10 feet above the piping being tested and inspected for leaks over 15 minutes. An additional change in the 2021 code allows for vacuum air testing for plastic DWV systems, providing an alternative method for testing in cold temperatures where water testing may be difficult. This vacuum test eliminates safety concerns associated with air pressure tests and is gaining use in the industry. P2708.4, P2713.3, shower and bathroom control valves. This is just a clarification. The code now addresses field adjustments and access to shower control valves. The lower flow shower heads need to be compatible with a shower control mixing valve. The IRC now requires a shower control valve be rated for the flow rate of the installed shower head to ensure scald thermal shock protection. Previously, shower heads were limited to a maximum flow rate of 2.5 gallons per minute, and the mixing valves were designed to safely operate at that flow. However, low flow shower heads, which may not provide sufficient motive power for the valve to adjust during the temperature to increase changes, could compromise safety as a result. Um, so the code update maintains that the mixing valves be compatible with the specific flow rate of the shower head to prevent temperature shock. Additionally, for bathrooms and whirlpool bathtubs, the code requires access to water temperature limiting devices for field adjustment unless they are non-adjustable. So now the flow rate of the shower head has to match the flow rate of the valve. P2905.3, length of hot water piping to fixtures. This was not adopted by the rack. Electrical, E3601.8, emergency service disconnect. This is an addition. An emergency service disconnect is required in a readily accessible outdoor location. Again, the 2021 code introduces a new requirement for emergency disconnect to be located at a readily accessible point outside of the building. This emergency disconnect is intended to allow first responders to quickly and safely cut off power in emergency situations, especially when the service disconnect is located inside, such as in a basement or garage, which can be difficult or unsafe to access. The emergency disconnect may be a separate device near the service entrance or the service disconnect itself, and it must be clearly marked with a sign indicating its purpose and whether it services as a meter or service disconnect. This change aims to improve safety and response time during emergencies. And here's just a diagram of what the intent is. E3606.5, service surge protective devices. This is an addition. A surge protection device is now required at all service terminals. And in a 2021 code now requires the installation of a surge protective device integral to or immediately adjacent to the service equipment, including for replacement service equipment. This change addresses the growing concern over the impact of electrical surges or sensitive electronics, which can damage components or cause data loss. The surge protective device must be either a Type 1 or Type 2 device. The Type 1 devices are typically installed on the supply side before the main service disconnect, though they can also be used downstream, while Type 2 devices are restricted to the load side of the main disconnect. This requirement is designed to protect electronic devices, appliances, and safety devices like GFCIs or AFCIs and smoke alarms from surge-related damage. And here's just a diagram of what they're talking about. This diagram is taken directly out of the code book. E3703.4, bathroom branch circuits. This is a clarification. Only the required bathroom receptacle outlets or those servicing a countertop need to be on a dedicated 20 amp circuit. This update provision in E3703 clarify the requirements for bathroom branch circuits. A minimum of 120 amp circuit is required to serve bathroom receptacle outlets, specifically those located within 36 inches of a lavatory basin as per section E3901.6. This circuit is not intended to serve other outlets in the bathroom, such as lighting, unless it only services a single bathroom, in which case the lighting can be included in the same circuit. The revised text clarifies that only the required bathroom receptacle outlets or those servicing a countertop or a work surface must be on the dedicated 20 amp circuit, while other general purpose receptacle outlets in the bathroom may be serviced by a separate 15 or 20 amp circuit. E3703.5, garage branch circuits. This is a modification. Only the required receptacle outlets must be on the 20 amp dedicated circuit for garages. And E3703 outlines the minimum requirements for branch in a dwelling unit, specifying when separate circuits are needed. For example, separate 20 amp circuits are required for kitchen, dining areas, bathrooms, laundry rooms, as well as separate heating equipment. The 2015 IRC introduced a separate circuit requirement for garages, initially permitting either a 15 or 20 amp circuit. The 2018 IRC, this was changed to a 20 amp circuit dedicated solely to the garage receptacle outlets, with an exception for exterior receptacles with ready access. The 2021 code further clarifies that only the required receptacle outlets, such as those in each vehicle bay, need to be supplied by this dedicated 20 amp circuit. Basically, if you have a 2-car garage, each garage bay must have a 20 amp outlet dedicated to this circuit. If you have a 3-car garage, obviously you'll need 3. Optional outlets like those for a garage door opener may now be on a general purpose 15 or 20 amp circuit. Kitchen countertops and work surface receptacles. This has been not accepted by the RAC report, so we don't need to worry about that. E3902 GFCI protection for 250 volt receptacles. This is a modification. Change summary: ground fault circuit interrupter protection is required for up to 250 volt receptacles in the areas previously identified as requiring GFCI protection for 125 volt receptacles. The 20 amp limitation has been removed. So basically anywhere that there's a requirement for a GFCI on a 20 amp receptacle, if you additionally have a receptacle up to 250 volts, not caring about amperage, that now has to have a GFCI protection. E3902.5 GFCI protection for basement receptacles. Again, this is a modification. The requirement for GFCI protection in unfinished basement areas has been expanded to include all basement areas. So now any outlet in your basement now has to have a GFCI protection. This change to address concerns about conductive floor surfaces such as concrete or ceramic tile in these areas that could pose a shock. E3902.10 GFCI protection for indoor damp and wet location. This is an addition. Change summary states GFCI protection is now required for indoor damp wet locations not included in other specific locations requiring GFCI protection. The new language broadens the GFCI requirements to encompass additional damp wet locations such as like mudrooms or outdoor accesses or pet bathing or grooming areas. Now this expands the safety measure. It also presents interpretation issues for building code officials who must assess the potential shock hazards. So this might be different based on how it's being interpreted by your local building official. And that pretty much ends our portion of the PA UCC Residential Code Update Part 2. If you have any questions about this, you can send an email to PHRC. Me specifically, dtw153@phrc.edu, or you can go online and look up the PHRC and just send an email to our general email if needed. Thank you for your time and look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.